The ice cream melted on my sleeve before I realized I hadn't even taken a bite. It was pistachio, her favorite, the kind she only ever ate on her birthday. I bought it on impulse, 30 minutes after everyone else had gone home, standing alone outside the very venue I spent 3 months saving up for. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't even say her name. I just stood there, holding that cone, staring down at the pavement like it might give me the explanation she couldn't. My name's Everett. I'm 39. I've been married to a woman named Callie for 7.5 years. We met at an airport during a storm delay and got married 11 months later. We used to say we fell in love between canceled flights and vending machine sandwiches. She liked that story. So did I. Until now. Callie was the kind of woman who filled up every room she walked into. She could make the barista tell her his whole life story in under 2 minutes, and she'd remember the name of your neighbor's dog even if she only saw it once. People gravitated toward her. That used to make me proud. Now, it makes me sick. Her 35th birthday was coming up, and she told me very casually, very gently, that this year she didn't want anything small. No quiet dinner, no spa day. She wanted a night to remember. She said it with a smile and a stretch like she was testing the words, like she wasn't sure if I'd bite. I did. I sold some equipment I wasn't using. I cashed out some of my unused PTO. I pulled every string I could to get the venue she once pointed at from a highway exit and said, "That place looks like a dream." The event was perfect. Everyone said so. The decor? Handpicked. The food? Farm to table. The music? A live acoustic duo that sang the song we danced to at our wedding, only she didn't want to dance that night. She said her feet hurt. Said her dress was too tight. I believed her. I wish I hadn't. Because while I was stacking champagne flutes in the back kitchen with the staff, yes, I stayed to help clean up, she was nowhere to be found. And when I asked her best friend if she'd seen Callie, she gave me a look I didn't recognize. It wasn't concern. It wasn't confusion. It was pity. I found Callie an hour later. Not in the bathroom. Not in the lounge. Not in the garden patio. But outside, in the passenger seat of a car I didn't recognize, with a man I'd never met. Their heads were close. Too close. I didn't need to see more. I turned around, walked back inside, and quietly took my ring off. I placed it on top of the untouched cake she insisted on ordering even though she said she wasn't eating sugar this month. Then I left. That's how the night ended. With me holding a pistachio cone in a parking lot I didn't belong in anymore. The next morning, the venue manager called to ask if someone had forgotten a wedding ring. I told her she could toss it. She hesitated, probably thinking I was being dramatic. I wasn't. I was done. I didn't go home. I didn't text her. I drove to a motel outside town, tossed my phone on the nightstand, and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. Sleep never came. Just silence. The kind that eats away at your inside slowly, like erosion. It wasn't just what I saw that night, it was what I felt hours before it happened. You ever notice how betrayal doesn't always hit you like a truck? Sometimes it creeps in like a draft under a door. Cold, quiet, and invisible. That night, the draft was everywhere. Callie didn't text until 11 a.m. Where are you? Are you okay? Last night was confusing. Please come home. Confusing? That was the word she chose. I stared at the screen until it dimmed out. She didn't apologize. She didn't even mention him. Just confusing. Like the night rearranged itself while she wasn't looking. By 4 p.m., she'd left 4 more messages and 1 voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I didn't need to. I knew the tone. She cried just enough to sound human. Maybe mention the pressure she's been under. Maybe throw in how drunk she was, how it wasn't what it looked like. That's the trick. They make you feel like the crime is your misunderstanding. But I wasn't confused. I was the one who made her dream night come true. And in return, she disappeared with someone else before the candles were even blown out. I finally returned to our house 2 days later, when I was sure she'd be at work. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to gather my things and disappear before the damage spread further. The door was still decorated, a little gold banner that said 35 and fabulous. It fluttered in the breeze like nothing had happened. Inside, everything was clean. Too clean. She must have done a full sweep, hoping to reset the stage before I got back. But you can't bleach betrayal. The air still reeked of lies. I packed a suitcase in 10 minutes. I left my suits. Left my hiking boots. Left the framed photo of us on our honeymoon in Oregon. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. But I did leave one thing, a note. You had your night. I'll take my piece. That was it. No yelling. No begging. No drawn-out argument filled with crocodile tears. I locked the door behind me for the last time, not knowing if she'd ever take it seriously. Turns out, she didn't, not at first. 2 days later, she showed up at my sister's house. Makeup smeared, voice shaking, practically demanding answers. And that's when everything spiraled into something I never expected, not even in my worst fears. When Callie showed up at my sister's house, she didn't knock like a woman who was ashamed. She banged on the door like someone who'd been wronged. My sister, Viv, called me immediately. "She's outside," Viv whispered. "She says she just wants to talk." "I don't," I replied. "She's crying." "I'm not." Viv didn't push. She knew better than anyone what this felt like. Her ex-husband had done something similar, except he didn't wait until the candles were blown out to start cheating. I stayed in the guest room with the door shut, and after 10 minutes of silence, I heard the front door open again and her voice echoed down the hallway. "Everett, please." I didn't do anything with him. I swear to you. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Nothing happened. I was drunk. I shouldn't have gone with him, but it wasn't what you think. Just talk to me. Yell at me if you want. Just don't. Don't end us like this. The irony was almost insulting. She didn't want me to end it like this, yet she was the one who walked out of her own birthday party, climbed into a car with a stranger, and forgot to come home. I guess I was just supposed to pretend that never happened, so we could keep living in the illusion. The door finally shut again. Viv later told me she stood outside for almost an hour, pacing and crying and saying my name to no one in particular. I didn't care. I'd heard enough. Or at least I thought I had. That same night, when Viv went out to pick up food, I did something I hadn't planned on. I opened the old phone Callie had given me 6 months ago when she upgraded. Said I could use it as a backup. I never turned it on, not until then. It still had her messages. Old ones. Archived and unsent. She must have forgotten. I wish I never looked. There were hundreds of messages. Not just to one guy, but 3 different ones. Names I didn't recognize. Max, Oliver, Brent. All saved under innocuous labels, HR team, dog walker, realtor. She was clever. I'll give her that. Some were flirty. Some were graphic. Some had timestamps that aligned with nights she'd told me she was working late or grabbing wine with coworkers. But the ones that broke me weren't sexual. They were emotional. Intimate. You make me feel seen. With you, I can breathe. I hate how dull everything feels when I'm home. That last one hit like a truck. Because I was the home. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, trying to connect the woman I married with the person who typed these messages. And the awful part? I couldn't. They weren't the same. She hadn't just made a mistake at her birthday party. She'd been building an exit ramp for months, maybe longer. The party was just the soft launch of her freedom. And I had funded the whole damn thing. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to scream or throw things or make her feel small. I just needed distance and a new version of myself who could live with the fact that the woman I loved had turned me into a prop in her performance. That's when I made the decision. I would vanish from her life in a way she couldn't predict. No explanations. No drawn-out divorce drama. Just a clean cut. What she did next only proved I was right. Because the moment she realized I wasn't chasing her, she started digging even deeper. And in doing so, she uncovered something neither of us saw coming. The night I decided to disappear, I didn't just leave, I observed. I didn't want revenge, but I did want clarity. So I created a new email address, logged into an old dummy account I once used for work testing, and set up notifications linked to all our shared accounts, the ones she forgot to remove me from. Airbnb, Lyft, food delivery. She hadn't changed the passwords. I wasn't spying. I was just learning. And what I saw confirmed more than I expected. Within 3 days of our last encounter, she booked a weekend in Santa Barbara, just for 2. A cozy house near the marina. The reservation name said, Oliver plus guest. The same Oliver from her phone. The one she said was barely someone she knew. I didn't get angry. I got quiet. She really thought I was gone. Emotionally, legally, financially. But I was still technically her husband. I hadn't filed yet. And I hadn't said a word to her since the voicemail I never listened to. That silence? It started to eat her alive. She started emailing me, then messaging me through random platforms. LinkedIn, Venmo, even Spotify. All saying some version of the same thing. Can we talk? As if dialogue could stitch over betrayal like a band-aid on a bullet wound. I ignored it all. But I didn't delete any of it. I started saving everything. Every message, every timeline overlap, every receipt. Not because I planned to use it in court, but because I needed the truth to be undeniable. For myself. For the version of me that once believed she'd never even look at another man. But one afternoon, I got a message I couldn't ignore. It was from my friend Drew, who worked in finance. We hadn't talked in weeks, but he messaged out of nowhere. Hey, Ev. Weird question. Did you and Callie get a joint credit card through my bank a few months ago? I froze. We had. For travel points. She said it was smart. I agreed. But I hadn't used it in months. Drew followed up immediately. I saw a $2,600 charge flagged for potential fraud. Hotel package under both your names. Just figured I'd check before I froze it. I thanked him and asked him to freeze the account immediately. That night, I looked at the bank portal. She had used our joint card, which I paid the balance on to fund that getaway with Oliver. Romantic dinner, wine tastings, couples massages. And yes, she selected anniversary package at checkout. That broke something inside me I didn't know was still intact. She wasn't just cheating. She was celebrating it on my dime. But what she didn't know was that the account wasn't frozen instantly. It took 24 hours. Which meant the next day, when she tried to book a follow-up trip through the same card, she was denied. And 2 hours later, my phone lit up for the first time in weeks with a new notification. Callie, I know you're still getting these. We need to talk. Please. You're scaring me. Scaring her? I hadn't said a single word. And yet my silence was more terrifying than anything I could have shouted. That's when it hit me, she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for control. She'd been able to manipulate, distract, and excuse her way through everything. But now, nothing was working. And the man she betrayed had gone completely quiet. That's what terrified her. Not my anger. Not my heartbreak. But my absence. Still, I wasn't ready to speak. I had one more stop to make, and one final question that had been burning in the back of my mind since the night of her party. Who was the man in the car? Oliver wasn't just a name in her phone. He was something worse. Something much closer to home. I stared at his name on her messages for days before I allowed myself to connect the dots. At first, he was just another faceless fling in the pile of mistakes. But when I saw the hotel package under both their names, something shifted. Oliver wasn't just a convenient stranger from work. He was someone I knew. I opened her old phone again, went through the photos, not just the obvious ones, but the hidden ones, the archived folders she probably assumed I'd never see. That's where I found it. A group selfie from 8 months ago at a barbecue we hosted. My hand was on the grill. Callie was holding a drink. And standing next to her, arms too close, smile too warm, was him. Oliver Lane, my college roommate. I hadn't seen him in years, not until that summer when Callie said we should invite some of the old friends back into our lives, just to reconnect. He had just moved back to California. His mom was sick, and he wanted to be near family. Callie said she bumped into him at a wine shop one weekend. What a crazy coincidence, she said, all casual and wide-eyed. She said he asked about me, about how I was doing, if I still grilled ribs like I used to. I believed her. I let him into my home. I made him dinner. I gave him a couch when he said his new apartment had a plumbing problem. And every time I left for work early, or stayed late, or went out to get groceries, he stayed. With her. Laughing in my kitchen. Drinking wine I bought. He betrayed me like a snake. But she handed him the knife. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up until dawn reading every thread of conversation between them. They had their own nicknames. Inside jokes I didn't recognize. Voice messages she saved and played back. The thing that burned the most? She once wrote to him, I wish Everett had half your soul. I wasn't even a person to her anymore, just a point of comparison. That morning, I made the call. Not to Callie, not to Oliver, but to my attorney. I'd already been living out of a guest room for weeks. I had my clothes, my laptop, my peace. What I needed now was closure. The legal kind. I sat across from my lawyer, a calm, razor-sharp woman named Jordan who didn't waste time with fluff. I gave her everything. Printouts, screenshots, call logs, timeline summaries. I didn't want to fight dirty, but I also wasn't going to be passive. I want this clean, I told her. I want her out of my finances, out of my space, and out of my name. She nodded once. And the joint property? Sell the house. I don't want it. I don't even want to see it again. When I left her office, the sun was out, but the world still felt cold. Like I was breathing in something sterile and hollow. Not grief, just clarity. And that, in its own way, was more painful than heartbreak. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was finished. But of course, Callie wasn't. The moment she got served, her composure shattered. She showed up at Viv's house again, this time with red eyes and shaking hands. She begged to talk to me. Said she was ready to tell me everything, to be honest, for real this time. Viv told her to leave. That night, I got a text from Callie. Just 2 words. I'm pregnant. And just like that, everything that had been clean, cold, and quiet cracked wide open again. I stared at that message for almost 5 minutes, not moving, not blinking. I'm pregnant. 2 words. 8 letters. And suddenly the oxygen in the room felt thinner. I wasn't naive. I knew what this was. Not a confession, a tactic. She hadn't reached out to me for 3 straight days after the papers were delivered. No pleading. No threats. No apologies. Just silence. And then, out of nowhere, she drops that? It was a last-minute Hail Mary thrown at a man she thought still had feelings to catch it. But the thing was, I didn't feel anything. Not confusion. Not fear. Not even denial. Just numb calculation. Because I knew it wasn't mine. And I knew she knew it too. Callie and I hadn't been intimate in over 4 months. The last time we'd even shared a bed, we were back-to-back, like strangers on a flight. I remember that night specifically because I'd asked if she was okay, and she said she was just emotionally disconnected. I didn't push. I never liked pressuring anyone for anything. But now I realized she wasn't disconnected. She was invested elsewhere. I didn't respond to her message right away. I forwarded it to Jordan, my attorney, and she replied 5 minutes later, do not reply. Let's request a court-mandated test. But something inside me wanted to see how far Callie would go. I wasn't being vengeful. I was being precise. I wanted her to either admit the truth or expose herself deeper trying to avoid it. So I responded, are you sure? A minute later, her typing bubble started. Then stopped. Then started again. Yes. About 7 weeks. I took 2 tests. 7 weeks. That would make conception somewhere around the weekend I left, maybe a few days earlier. I played along. Wow. This is big. Have you told anyone else? She replied instantly. Only you. Please don't shut me out now. We need to be united. I know I hurt you. But this changes everything. We can start again. That line, we can start again. She thought pregnancy was a reset button. A redemption arc she could script herself into. I could practically hear her rehearsed voice in my head. But what she didn't know, I already had the hotel reservation dates. I already had screenshots of her text with Oliver that lined up with the exact day she disappeared. I had the lift receipts. The voice messages. I knew where she was. I knew who she was with. I knew what they did. I also knew one other thing. Oliver had a vasectomy 5 years ago. And Callie, and all her cheating, lying, manipulative chaos, clearly didn't know that. Because what she didn't know was that Oliver and I weren't just old friends. We had stayed in touch off and on for years. I knew about his life even before he reappeared. He used to tell me about his surgeries, about how he never wanted kids. He got clipped after his first engagement ended. Said it gave him peace of mind. So either she wasn't pregnant, or she was, and Oliver wasn't the father either. There was a third man, and that thought made me nauseous. Because now I wasn't just looking at betrayal. I was looking at a woman who'd created an entire fantasy, layered in manipulation, and thought she could pull me back in with biology. But this wasn't a movie. I wasn't the character she expected me to be. So I replied one final time. Then we'll need a DNA test before I say another word. The reply didn't come right away. Not in 5 minutes. Not in 20. In fact, it didn't come until 3 days later. And when it did, it wasn't Callie. It was Oliver. And what he told me changed everything. It was a Thursday morning, 9:12 a.m., when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up, maybe instinct, maybe curiosity. Maybe I was just tired of silence. Everett, the voice said. It took me 2 seconds to place it. Oliver. He sounded exhausted. But not guilty, not exactly. It was something else. Like regret mixed with fear. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence stretch. I wanted to know why he was calling. Why now? I figured you'd never want to talk to me again, he said. And I wouldn't blame you. Still, I didn't respond. I need to tell you something before you hear it from her, or worse, from a lawyer. Now that got my attention. He took a deep breath. The pregnancy? It's not mine. I almost laughed. I know. You had a vasectomy. He hesitated. How did you? You told me. 5 years ago. Vegas. You said you got it after Dana left. A pause. Then, almost to himself, he muttered, wow. You really did remember. I remember a lot of things, I said flatly. Like how you moved into my house and slept with my wife while I was buying groceries for both of you. He didn't deny it. He didn't even defend it. Just let the weight of it sit there. She told me she was divorcing you, he said quietly. That you were basically already separated. That you'd checked out. She made it sound like I wasn't breaking anything. Just stepping into something that had already ended. I almost dropped the phone from laughing. You believe that? I wanted to. There it was. The truth. He wasn't a monster, just a weak man who chose the easier lie over the harder reality. And Callie? She weaponized that weakness with surgical precision. But that's not why I called, he continued. It's about someone else. Now my stomach turned. There's a guy, he said. His name's Trent. I found out about him 2 nights ago. She was still seeing him while she was with me. I didn't even know until I saw his name pop up on her phone while she was in the shower. I confronted her. I clenched the phone harder. She told me she was pregnant. I knew it wasn't mine, but she swore it was yours. Said you were trying to punish her with distance and were using a fake paternity test threat to avoid responsibility. I almost dropped the phone. She told you that? She did. And she was unhinged, man. I've never seen someone spiral like that. She was crying and throwing things and accusing me of setting her up. I left that night. Haven't gone back. I sat down slowly on the edge of the guest bed. My breath came out in short, cold bursts. She's unraveling, he said. And if she drags you into this custody thing, you need to be ready. You need to get ahead of it, because I think she's about to do something really reckless. A beat of silence passed. Then he added, almost like a confession, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I really am. You didn't deserve this. From her. From me. I didn't answer. I just hung up. Not out of anger, but because I had heard everything I needed. There was a third man. There was a potential pregnancy. And there was a woman spinning so wildly out of control that she no longer knew which lie to commit to. I drove straight to Jordan's office. I laid out everything, the call, the screenshots, the tangled mess of text logs and timelines. She listened in silence, jotting notes like a surgeon mapping out the cut. When I finished, she asked, do you want full separation? Or are we preparing for war? I want both, I said. I want to be so far out of this that she forgets what my silence feels like. But if she drags me in, I want to be ready. Jordan nodded slowly. Then she looked up and said, let's run a background check on Trent. Let's get ahead of it all. And that's how I found out the most disturbing piece of all. Because Trent wasn't just another man. He was Callie's ex from before we met. And she never told me they'd stayed in contact all these years. The file Jordan handed me was thin. Just 6 printed pages. But it held enough truth to shatter whatever illusion Callie still thought she could maintain. Trent wasn't just an old flame. He was the man she had been engaged to before me. The same man she claimed was toxic and jealous and unhinged when we first started dating. The one she said taught her never to trust men again. Turns out they never stopped seeing each other. Not during our first year. Not when we bought the house. Not even on our honeymoon, when she claimed she was sick on our last day and spent it alone in the hotel room. There was a receipt from that same weekend. Champagne. A nearby suite. His name was on the reservation. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. Because by the time the final truth came to light, I had nothing left to lose. And, somehow, that gave me everything I needed to rebuild. We didn't go to court. Callie disappeared from the process the moment we demanded a paternity test, background disclosures, and a psychological evaluation if custody was claimed. Her attorney ghosted us after 2 emails. Whether she was ever really pregnant, I'll never know. But the silence that followed spoke louder than any answer she could have given. In the end, I sold the house. I kept only what I arrived in the marriage with, my books, my tools, and an old record player that somehow survived every move we made. I boxed it all up in 2 days, left the keys on the counter, and walked out of that house with one bag over my shoulder and not a single regret. But that's not where the story ends. Because the real ending didn't come in a courtroom, or through paperwork, or by catching her lies one by one. The real ending came 6 months later, on a beach I'd never seen before, standing next to someone I never expected to meet. Her name is Elise. She's not the love of my life. She's not some dramatic twist of fate or rebound fantasy. She's just kind, steady, real. We met at a community workshop on restoring vintage furniture, something I signed up for on a whim, just to give myself a reason to leave the house on Saturdays. She was helping her dad rebuild an old cedar cabinet from their childhood home. We didn't flirt. We built things. Slowly. Week by week. And somewhere in that process, As the wood was sanded and the old hinges were replaced, something else began to rebuild too. Me. She doesn't ask about my past unless I want to share. She doesn't make promises. She doesn't play games. And when she smiles, it's not because she wants to be adored, but because she's truly at peace. The first time I told her the full story about Callie, she didn't gasp or offer pity. She just nodded, took my hand, and said, "I'm glad you made it out." That was all. And it was more than enough. Today, I live in a small house near the coast. Nothing extravagant, but everything is mine. The mornings are quiet. The coffee tastes better. And the man I see in the mirror finally looks like someone I trust again. I don't hate Callie. I don't think about Oliver. I don't even wonder what happened to Trent. None of them live in me anymore. I let them go like heavy bags I carried too long. Because here's the truth. I paid for the party that broke my marriage, but I walked away with something far more valuable. Peace, clarity, and a future that no one else gets to rewrite.